Hello and welcome to Self Talk. I'm your host, Rachel Astarte. Jem Fuller, who is my guest today, has lived a colorful global life. From barefoot backpacker to corporate leader, fire dancer and traditional tattooist, a kindergarten teacher to motorcycle courier, masseuse and reflexology practitioner to laborer and travel consultant. Now his time is spent as a leadership coach and international retreat leader, a dedicated partner and father. He is also the author of the award-winning book, The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men, and he can be seen delivering his TEDx talk on YouTube. Jem, welcome to Self Talk.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on your show, Rachel.
I'm really excited. Today we're going to talk about a lot of things, but focusing really on creating habitual practices of self-love. We're going to go into talking about what is self-love, and how we apply self-love in the real world through conscious communication, and all of those good things. But I'd love for you to start, if you would, Jem, with telling us a little bit about your story. How did you get started doing all of these colorful things?
Yeah, it's interesting now as I look back over the different chapters of my life. I'm 51 currently, so I like to kind of do round figures and guess that I'm halfway there. um, and in the first half of my life, there's been a lot of different chapters, and like you touched on in the intro, lots of colorful pieces to the puzzle. And it's interesting now, I see how they all fit. I see how all the pieces come together, but it was never planned. I didn't have a grand plan. I grew up in a pretty normal suburban middle class family in Melbourne, Australia, and went through things that that we go through in life, right? Us humans. And some of the standout things were, when I was turning 18, my best friend died on his motorbike. I was in the last year of high school at that time, and that kind of sent me on a bit of a spin. And prior to that, also growing up, I had been quite a reaction to my father. I loved my father, and he was the man on the pedestal. But at the same time, I also didn't want to be him, and I was quite a reaction to him. So as soon as I finished high school, I took off and got as far away as I could to the other side of the world. People call it a gap year now. It wasn't called a gap year back then. It was just called running away.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I went and did that, and wanted to be an actor actually, and went to drama school here in Australia and did a bit of acting. But my love for travel overtook my love for acting, and so most of my 20s and early 30s, I was either traveling to weird and wonderful places, or I was earning money somewhere else to get to another weird and wonderful place.
Yeah.
And that led to all of the interesting jobs like in tattooing and kindergarten teaching in Taiwan, and volunteering in third world countries and all sorts of fun stuff. So dot pointing, fell in love. We got married. We kept traveling around the world for a few years. Then we wanted to have kids. Early 30s, became a father and realized that I didn't have any career or qualifications or any sort of real way to support these kids and give them some stability. So I got a job with an international travel company. So I worked as a travel consultant, ended up in senior leadership, and playing that whole corporate game that I had really done my best to avoid. There I was in the suit and tie, all of the stuff that I used to say, I'm never going to do that. So I did the suit and tie thing, and lots of things were happening then. So through this 8 years in the corporate world, this incessant pressure that the corporate world feels to just grow net profit, quarter on quarter, you've got to just keep growing that net profit at all costs. And the costs were that I moved a long way away from my own personal core values. I was becoming someone that I wasn't, that I didn't feel aligned with, but felt that I had to be. And it's funny, Rachel, on the outside, I had this kind of Instagram feed life. I had a beautiful wife and I had two young boys, and we built the house and the white picket fence, and I had the corporate job, and I was flying around the world. And on the outside, I was doing everything that our Western culture had told me I should do to be happy. But I was desperately unhappy, and it was getting worse and worse. That's a whole other story. And then got to the point of the midlife crisis, which in the end for me was a midlife awakening and a midlife opportunity. So in my early 40s, lost my job, lost my marriage, lost the house we built, lost all the contents, everything. Thankfully kept my two children week on, week off. So we've been 50-50 parenting for the last 10 years. I've been single parent 1 week and then without them the next week.
I'm the same way.
Right.
Hey, I get my kid after school, but I still get to see him every day. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that went into that arrangement. But really the most profound part of that midlife awakening was that I realized, that's when, and this was just over 10 years ago, that I realized, and this is where I'm really fascinated to have a conversation with you and your podcast, is the self-talk that had been going on unconsciously, largely unconsciously, and accidentally leading up to then, was all of the I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I should be more like him, I should be more like that person, I don't deserve happiness, all of this background stuff. And the quality of the self-talk, if I was reprimanding myself, cussing at myself, using horrible, harsh words, abusive language to self. The self-talk was abusive. Yeah. Not all the time, but quite often. Horrible. I look back now and think, wow, what a horrible way to be in relationship with self. Yeah. And there certainly hadn't been any real self-love. There'd been surface level self-love, but no real deep self-love, as in radical self-acceptance and proper self-compassion and all of this stuff that I'm interested to talk with you about. Anyway, realized that, and realized that I needed to change the wiring, the neural wiring. So I went to work on myself, and over the last 10 years, I've created habitual practices now. So they're daily, they happen every day, habitually, practices of self-love. And it was amazing and fascinating to see what happened with my relationship with the outside world when I went to work healing the relationship with my internal world, the relationship with self. And as the relationship with self became more beautiful, my experience of the outside world became more beautiful. And as I started to believe that I am enough and that I do deserve love and abundance and happiness and all of those wonderful things, that's what started to show up, including my current partner. We've been together for 7 years, including Talia showing up in my life, this amazing, wonderful, perfect for me woman. And she absolutely loves me just the way I am, just the way I am, unconditionally. It's really quite a stunning relationship that I'm in now, and very conscious. And my relationship with my kids and life and work and everything has just been constantly improving as I continue to nurture and curate a beautiful relationship with myself. So there you go, there's the story.
Yeah, I love the verb curate, to curate it, because it's a work of art, the work that we do on ourselves. I wanted to go back to the pivotal moment when you said enough with the negative self-talk. Was there something that happened that made you say, this is not sustainable, this is dragging me down? Or was it a gradual wearing down of like, this is not, I got to stop doing this because it's not serving me in any way. In fact, it's holding me back. Did something happen to make you change how you felt about yourself? And I'll preface it with this. Clearly, I work with a lot of my clients have difficulty with self-talk, which is why I started this podcast almost 4 years ago. And what I find is that with almost in every case, they have that trouble making that leap to I am good enough.
Yeah.
Right. So I wonder if you could speak to that personally, and then maybe in your experience with people that you've worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, both of those scenarios were occurring and occurred. So there was a gradual build up, and I don't mind being completely vulnerable and sharing, because I hope that some of your listeners out there feel a glimmer of hope if they're feeling maybe stuck in their own version of this. But for me, all of my self-loathing, lack of self-worth, self-deprecation, and self-anxiety, and all of this, I inadvertently put into one aspect of my life, which was sexual intimacy in my marriage. And so any of my lack of self-confidence or worth, to the outside world, you would never have known.
Right.
I was this confident guy out there, successful, doing well. All of my anxieties I put into this one place. And so my ability to, quote unquote, perform sexually just got worse and worse and worse and worse, to the point of just having anxiety attacks.
Oh, wow.
And it was really sad. It was really, really sad. And I was completely ashamed. I didn't tell anyone. My wife knew, but I didn't tell anyone. I was so ashamed, so embarrassed, and so deeply sad, because all I wanted to do was be her man in that way. All I wanted to do was, again, quote unquote, take her in that way and make her feel good and connect and all of the beautiful stuff. And I wanted it so bad, but I didn't believe I was good enough. So it just became this racket. I created my own racket. And so then it was, and then the self-talk was horrible to go along with that. So that was over time, building up to a point where it was just, I almost gave up.
Wow.
I almost gave up. So that was the building up bit. And then there was the catalyst, the aha. And it happened in a traditional North American Indian sweat lodge here on Indigenous sacred Aboriginal land here in Australia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was sitting in a sweat with a group of men that I've been sitting in men's circle with. And it was a particularly hot sweat. And I ended up having quite an amazing experience. I had a full out-of-body experience. And I went back to being 5 years old. And I knew I was 5, not 4, not 6. I knew I was 5. And I was flying around out of body as a 5-year-old, completely free from anything negative or cynical. 5 was my last year of the age of innocence, when life was just wondrous. Because when I was 6 years old, my father lost his temper and beat me up. He scared me. And that's when now I'm piecing it all together as an adult, looking back.
Right.
It was that event when my father lost his temper and beat me up, and I really got so frightened and so scared. That's when I started to think that I wasn't good enough, because I wasn't good enough for the man on the pedestal, the man that I revered. Yeah. And for him to, this was me making sense of it as a kid, for him to do that to me, I must not be good enough for his love.
Right.
So subconsciously starts this belief, oh, I'm not good enough. And then as we go through the years, the belief becomes part of the filtering system for the information around us. And we start to filter the information from our environment to back up our belief.
Of course.
So then,
yeah.
So more and more events happen, and I'm going, I knew I wasn't good enough. I knew I wasn't good enough, right? And then we start attracting stuff to us that backs up our belief.
Right.
Anyway, that whole story. And I didn't know, obviously, as a kid, I had no idea. And I didn't know this through most of my life. Anyway, I had the out-of-body experience, flew around as a 5-year-old, was quite amazing. Came home that night from the sweat, went home, had this beautifully clear dream that there was a serpent living inside of me, and it had been there for a long time, and it was time for the serpent to come out. And I was trying in the dream to get this serpent out of me, but it would slither straight back inside me again. And actually, in the middle of this dream, one of my 2 children was restless in bed, and I had to go and settle my child, who was I don't know, 6 years old or something, 5 years old, had to go and settle my child, but I knew that the work wasn't finished in the dream. So I stayed half asleep. I went and settled my child, and I got back into bed, and I went back into the dream to finish this work. Anyway, I couldn't keep the serpent out on my own. I needed the help of some men. So there were these faceless men, brothers around me. And with a group of men, we found a way to get the serpent out and keep the serpent out of me. And when I woke up that morning, I woke up in bed, and straight away I knew what the dream meant. That serpent was my belief that had been living in my core for most of my life, that I wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it was time for me to get rid of that belief.
Yeah.
And then beautifully, Rachel, all the right books in a row just happened to come my way.
Yeah.
Books about evolving the brain by Joe Dispenza, and other books by authors about how we can change our beliefs. And I went to work. So that's when I rolled up my sleeves and I started a conscious practice of positive, loving, beautiful self-talk. On high repetition, because I heard that to get these neurons to wire together, they need to fire together repetitively a lot. So on high repetition, and it took, I think it took about 6 months before I even started to believe that I was enough. And then from 6 to 12 months, as I started to believe it, then slowly everything around me started to change.
That's an important point. I think that's worth repeating. It doesn't happen overnight.
No.
I mean, you might get that call like a dream, but you have to do the work.
You have to do the work.
And neuroplasticity takes time to, it's there. We know we can do it, but we have to really burn those neural pathways, and that takes repetition, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, up until then, I had 40 something years of the other wiring, and like you said, you can't just, sorry, Tony Robbins, I love you and I love your work, but you can't just go to a Tony Robbins weekend and the neural wiring's all different. You can have your aha moment.
Yeah.
You can walk on the hot coals. I've been there. I've done it. You can have your aha moment, but then you've got to go back and implement the 1% daily strategies. You've got to roll your sleeves up and do the work to create the change. And, my clients ask me, well, what's going to give me the leverage to do that? What's going to give me the motivation to actually do that? And you have to find something that means enough to you. For me, luckily, I had 2 boys, 2 sons, and I would look at these boys every day and love them so much. I was desperate to, excuse my language, I was desperate to sort my shit out. Right? I had to get my shit together because for these boys.
Yes.
So those children were the leverage for me to do the work every day.
Right. So something for the listeners to think about too. What is it that makes your work worth doing the work, and to understand that this is it can be difficult, but it's really an act of love.
Yeah.
It really is, whether you're, even just doing it for yourself, which we're going to talk about in a second, but doing it for yourself is wonderful. But to also be able to know, like, the shit stops with me for my kids.
Yeah.
So that I am a role model to them, that they can see you can go through hard times and it's okay. It's worth it. We don't have to live the perfect Instagram life, in order to, in fact, it's bullshit anyway. So, but the other thing I wanted to, what was it that you said when you were having this dream? You said your child was restless. And how old was your son?
I'm going to say I think he was 5 or 6 years old.
Well, it's interesting that the 5-year-old was you in the clear space. And here you are trying to get this serpent out of your body, and it's not working. And your 5-year-old is restless, right? Saying, hey.
I had I'd never thought of that, Rachel. I had never put those.
It's just like, it's amazing how that happens. Talking about intergenerational energy that occurs. Yeah.
And that particular son, I mean, obviously completely love both of my sons. that particular son and I have had experiences throughout his life where we've sat in silence, just looking into each other's eyes,
Mm,
and it's deep, deep, deep.
mm,
And I don't know the actual quantum mechanics of how it works, and I don't know how literal past life stuff is, but I do know that we are made of stuff that has come from stardust. Like, we're all made from the same building blocks,
absolutely.
and energy is, energy doesn't just start and stop. Energy is always there in
Right.
different forms. And I've had moments with that particular person, who in this story is my son, where we've looked into each other's eyes so beautifully and deeply and looked at each other like we know each other
Yeah.
beyond,
Yeah.
and that
That's
was the son who was restless when I was,
Yeah, that
yeah.
makes perfect sense. Oh my goodness. Is like
Mm.
being like, let take a break, fix
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
tend to me, and then you drop back in and get the shit done. I love it. And children are great in that way too. I have a son as well,
Mm.
and
Uh-huh.
there is that beautiful, beautiful connection that we have. And um the other part of it that I wanted to touch on, because this is the main point, when you talk about creating habitual practices of
Yeah.
self-love, I
Yeah.
wonder if you could talk about that. Now, I in my teaching, I have what I call a solitude practice that I teach to my clients, which is taking time for yourself every day to do something that is just for yourself, for your
Mm.
regeneration, not talking to other people, not faffing around on Facebook, but
Mm.
whether it's reading or journaling or meditating or taking a walk or taking a bath or something that's rejuvenating for your soul, that you do on a daily basis, which
Mm.
is an act of self-love, of course, and an act of self-creation or cultivation. So
Mm.
give us an idea of what that looks like for you. What is something that people
Yeah.
can do? Yeah.
Yeah. So my mornings all start habitually now. It's just habit. It's not something I have to force myself to do. It's a habit. They start with waking up and having, well, this is a recent addition to my morning routine. My partner and I have started taking athletic greens,
Mm.
and they get shipped to us from the States. I think they might even get made in New Zealand, and then they go to the States, and then they come back down to
That makes
Australia.
sense.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a very it's a combination of all of the beautiful greens and nutrients and supplements that are healthy for you. So it starts with that and water, and light. So light to the eyes, and then 20 minutes of meditation. And my preferred modality of meditation is mindfulness meditation, which is simply an awareness of the present moment, which is a practice. So 20 minutes of meditation, then affirmations every morning. And I have various affirmations that I choose from to say. Something that does get said every morning between my partner and I to ourselves and to each other is, today is a great day.
Mm-hmm.
Which doesn't always mean that every day is a great day, but that's how we start our day.
Sure.
One of my affirmations is my sense of identity, which is only to do with my values and the character of person that I aim to be in each moment. So I say every day, I'm a kind, caring, loving, generous, open-minded, action-taking man. And I say that every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then also other affirmations at the moment. One of my affirmations is 2023 is my best year yet.
Nice.
And also, so there's the affirmations, and I'm saying these affirmations while I'm making my way to the shower and getting ready for the day out loud.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When we say things out loud on vibration, it's even more.
Yeah.
And then there's I don't do the mirror talk all the time, but it's habitual now for me to catch myself in the mirror and pause and really look at myself and say, hey, I love you. You're a good
Mm-hmm.
human being.
Mm-hmm.
You go out there and do your best. Yeah.
Nice.
Um, so then I'll go on, and then there's exercise 3 to 4 days of the week at the gym,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of times either walking or running every week, and then surfing when the surf's good in the surf. So I've got my nature immersion. I
Yeah.
love nature. So that's what self-love looks like. I also write songs, and I love to play the guitar. That's
I was
nice
going to
time.
say, I wondered if you played guitar because I saw your picking thumb.
Yes.
I
Yes.
notice everything.
Oh, that's so true. I've got long nails on my
Yeah,
right hand and
it's
short
like
nails on my
you
left.
must play guitar. I'm pretty sure.
That's very astute of you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I'm going to guess that you created this practice for yourself. You
Yeah,
cultivated that practice for yourself.
100%. Yeah,
Okay.
100%.
So would it be fair to say that others could do the same?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. My clients, part of part of the coaching arrangement with me is weekly support, me supporting them with accountability. So I reach out to all of my clients every Monday personally and check in with them. Are you doing what you said you were going to do?
Mm.
Are you creating those new habits? And there's ways that we can create new habits. For example, one of the habitual practices that I've created, I call them pause moments. So throughout the day, I quite often will pause. And to create a habit, we link the new habit with an existing habit. So say brushing your teeth. Um, we all brush our teeth a couple of times a day. So if you wanted to create a new habit of some self-talk, say you wanted to say, I want to say some beautiful affirmations, some self-talk to myself twice a day.
Mm.
So put a little sticky note next to your toothbrush and it says affirmations, and you go to reach for your toothbrush, and before you start brushing your teeth, you say, I am enough. I deserve love and abundance and happiness, or whatever it is for you. I'm a good person, or whatever. Say your affirmations, then brush your teeth. What happens over time is that we have a neural association between brushing your teeth and your new habit. So
Right.
then you don't need the sticky note. I used to have sticky notes all over my house. I used to have a sticky note next to my coffee machine because I like to make my own coffee, grind the beans and do
Mhm.
the little process that I have. And I used to have a sticky note next to my coffee, next to the beans, saying pause. So,
Mm.
you're in the morning and you're getting the kids ready for school, and you're single parenting and you're juggling clients and this, and the day's off and running.
Mhm.
And that meditation that you did half an hour ago is starting to fade into,
As it does. Yes.
right? And then you get to the coffee machine, and I would see the little sticky note saying pause. And I go,
Right.
pause.
Mhm.
Take a breath and then continue. And
Beautiful.
now I don't have the sticky note there. Every time I go to my machine, to the beans, guess what
Mhm.
happens? I'm reminded to pause. So we
Right.
can create habits by linking them to other habits.
Yeah, that's such a helpful tool. And write it down, everybody. Put
Yeah.
it on. You get your pad of sticky notes, and because I have them too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really, really helpful, and that's a wonderful way to start creating those new neural pathways, and to focus on what it is that's beneficial for you. I think too, as we talk about it, when we talk about, this is a bit of a leap, but not really. When you were talking about checking in with your clients every Monday, there's something of a community that develops there too. So even if you are off doing your own things and um, you're doing your self love practice, your self care practice, there are many other people who are doing theirs. And so in a way, there's this beautiful community of people who are grounding themselves in their truth and their true selves, which is such a beautiful thing to consider. So sometimes, and the reason I bring this up is because sometimes this work feels so lonely. It's like,
Mm.
oh, it's just me and myself. But to think that there are so many other people out there who are, I hate to use the phrase bettering themselves, but
Mm.
to elevating their consciousness in this way
Mm.
is such a
Yeah.
lovely thing to consider.
Yeah, it is. It is one of the features on a mindfulness meditation app that I use is that when you go on to do the daily meditation, it tells you how many other people are doing that daily meditation around the world right now. There's
Wow.
this sense of community. It's like, oh wow, there's 2,337 other people doing this meditation at the same time as me. You know.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting too that there can be a sense of community, even if you're not actively interacting with those members of the community? I hear what you're saying, because it's like, oh, okay, so in the ether, we're all we're all
Yeah.
kind of connected. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's a
that's
really
right.
good.
And when we do a meta meditation, say a loving kindness meditation,
Mhm.
and you are visualizing someone that you are wishing happiness and love and all things good to, wishing that they be free from suffering. And so you're sitting in your room on your own, quote unquote, but as you're imagining this person, I mean, it feels really, really lovely and wonderful. It's such a beautiful vibrational state to be in, this meta loving kindness state of being. I can't help but think that on some level, energetically, on some level, because we're all connected, we are all we're all intrinsically, inseparably a part of the bigger system. We can't not be.
Right.
So on some level, that person is benefiting from that.
Mhm.
And it might be very subtle, but
Yes,
I think that we are connected. And so you can connect with community. I believe you can connect with community globally through a meditation.
absolutely, 100%. That also speaks to yeah, the interconnectedness part. But you mentioned earlier, very briefly, the manifestation aspect. That's what it is. The universe isn't out there. You are the universe.
Yeah,
You are the universe. So when you are, and you illustrated it beautifully, when your thoughts were negative, negative shit was happening. And
yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't mean that you did something good to make good things happen to you. You saw the world differently, and
yeah,
therefore the world reflected back to you differently. Right.
yeah.
So that's kind of what it's about. And that's a beautiful segue into conscious communication.
Mm,
Okay. So I wonder if you could speak to that, because I know that's a big part of your work too.
mm.
Um, yeah, let us know what that phrase means to you.
Well, the communication part, communication, the word comes from the Latin noun communicatio, which means a sharing.
Mm.
So not a telling, a
Right.
sharing.
Right.
And the Latin verb communicare, which means to make common. So so that we're understanding. So this is where communication comes from. And conscious, the reason I put the word conscious in front of communication, the more conscious of something we are, the more aware of it we are.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can be more aware in communication, more aware of the bigger picture, more aware of ourselves and where we might be getting in the way of the sharing and the understanding, which means being more aware of our sense of identity and the things that we hold on tightly to, and when we're blinkered and closed-minded and defensive of our ideas, and being aware of all of that, and almost being able to elevate above that egoic identity level, being aware of, obviously being aware of the other person as
Mm-hmm.
best as you can, because we can only perceive each other through our own filtering system.
Right.
There's a nice little conversation about that in a sec, but being as aware of the other person as you can, or people, being aware of the greater good of the communication itself. What is the purpose of this communication? What is the higher purpose of this coming together and seeking to understand?
Mm-hmm.
So that's conscious communication for me. And it's interesting, in the book I wrote a year ago, the first section of the book is that it starts with you. This communication piece starts with you. That's when I came across your show, your podcast. I was like, I want to talk with this woman. I want to talk with Rachel, because I really believe that this conscious communication needs to start with you.
Absolutely.
The less okay you are with yourself, the more stuff that you are still unresolved with yourself, which is your past,
Mm-hmm.
then the thicker the lens and the more distorted the lens is between you and the outside world.
Yeah.
Because I know you know this, so I'm hoping this is interesting to some of your listeners, but all of the information that we're receiving from the outside world. So as I'm looking at you, Rachel, what I can see and hear, if we were in the same room together, there's much more sensory information available. But all of that information has to go through my filtering system for me to then represent it in and create my internal hallucination of what I think reality is, right?
Right.
So the more I'll put it this way: the less resolved I am with myself and my past, the more static is going on inside me.
Yes,
But the
absolutely.
less clearly I can see you. But
Mm-hmm.
what I've found over the last 10 years of doing this beautiful self-talk, self-love, self-acceptance work, self-resolution, is that the more resolved I am with me and my past, the more completely I accept myself and love myself, the more clearly I see the outside world.
Yeah.
Because there's less static, there's less crap going on in here. So
Yes.
the more present I can be for you,
Mm-hmm.
or whoever I'm sitting with.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful because as your relationship with self becomes clearer, then your relationship with everyone else becomes clearer. It's really lovely.
Bingo. Right. I couldn't say it better myself. That's exactly the reason we do this self work. There's a big movement against the anti-individual stuff right now, and the reason I think that is because that's where people stop.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the self work. I'm going to get myself. I'm going to live the life I want to live.
Yeah.
Great, but then what? Right.
Yeah.
So how are you contributing to the collective consciousness in that way? Because I think that's what the only reason we're here is to make our individual contributions to collective consciousness so that we can, we can do the Buddhist thing. Everybody, everyone becomes a bodhisattva and everybody saves each other and game over. And then we all, unite with the light or whatever is going to happen. But what you said is so important is that that's our main purpose here is to create that to remove those obstacles, and we all have them. So there's nothing, and talk about getting down on yourself. We all have them. We all have our little bag of shit that we need to sort through before we can fully communicate in a clear way. And the reason that we do that is so that we can give back to the rest of our family,
Yeah. And there's a woman over in the States whose work really helped me with that. Her name's Byron Katie, and her book Loving What Is. And her book is quite confrontational in some parts. For some people, it pushes some nerves, but the essence of what she's saying was it really helped me make sense around the practice of radical self-acceptance. And she says that, she says that you can argue with reality if you want to, but reality will win. Only 100% of the time, she says, only 100% of the time. And what I take from that is that if we were to take a snapshot of time, if we could freeze frame time right now, everything is exactly as it's supposed to be. Right? Because it is. That's what it is. And you can argue with that if you want. You can say, but that shouldn't be like that. Yeah, but it is. You can argue till you're blue in the face. Reality will win. So then I look at myself and I go, okay, well, apparently I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be right now. Apparently I'm exactly enough to be me. I'm exactly who and what I should be right now in this moment. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm not hoping to improve and evolve and grow and everything, learning. That's fine.
That's dialectic.
Everything that's happened in the past should have. The good, the bad, and the ugly. It all should have, apparently, because it did. So then you can look at yourself and go, wow, I'm exactly who I'm supposed to be in this moment, apparently, because here I am with all my bits and bobs, just like this. And that was really helpful for me to go, do you know what? I'm not going to argue with reality anymore. I shouldn't be taller. I shouldn't be skinnier or more muscly. I shouldn't, apparently. I should just be this.
Yeah. That's what I'm here to do. Yeah.
This is what, and so then this radical self-acceptance and self-love frees up the space to say, okay, so here I am just as I'm supposed to be, and I love myself just the way I am.
And that's what's radical about it. Yeah.
And that's what's radical about it. And so that frees up my consciousness and my energy and my resilience to then look at how do I want to move into my future and how do I want to keep becoming by being in this moment this way, therefore becoming that way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the only way to do it, because you hold yourself back with the negative self-talk. You're beating yourself up because you're not the person you want to be. And that's where you stay, instead of what you're saying, which is, I accept this and I move forward. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Beautiful.
yeah.
We have to stop there for today, but how can
Um,
people reach you, Jem?
you can reach out to me through my website, jemfuller.com. That you can get my book and see the TEDx talk and my online courses. There's lots of free stuff. There's a free ebook. There's lots of stuff, resource for you on my website. If you want to follow me, I post every day on Instagram, Jem Fuller. That'd be great. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Great. And I'll have the links in the show notes so people can reach out. Thank you so much for a wonderful talk today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed the conversation, Rachel.
Hi, this is Rachel, the host of Self Talk with Rachel Astarte, also known as the best podcast you've never heard. Well, let's see if we can change that. If you would take a moment, please, to hit the subscribe button and maybe even that little bell next to it that lets you know when we release a new episode, which is every other week. Thank you so much.